complaints were made to the police force over that.
I don't know about that.
There was definitely correspondence with the police and my colleague.
Right.
It's taken place.
Is it something that can be reported back to the agency? I'd like to know whether, following all the stuff on social media, whether any of those complaints on social media actually made any complaint with registration numbers and with descriptions to the police force, which is the proper source, obviously. And if they didn't, then it does lend the argument that perhaps there was nothing in the story. There might be, I don't know, but unless we have evidence from the police to say, yes, they've had complaints and they're following up those complaints, we don't know the guy comments. So I would like to know if we can contact police. Not disappointed you to see if there have been specific complaints or what has happened to those complaints.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Yeah, we can certainly do that because my colleague Noel Burke, who was dealing with this last week, was in touch with them. The situation, and there was correspondence between them. Okay, thanks.
Right. Can I just ask what area of North Devon are these allegations?
I believe it was Barnstable.
Pardon?
Yeah, I believe it was Barnstable.
Barnstable area.
Yes, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and just to add to it, it does appear by those social media comments that there was an instigator as a door steward that had you know, I think it does say on there that who had probably started or been involved with it. So I think, like Councillor Clayton said, if we know sort of where, you know, and where we are with it as regards to reporting it.
Oh, right, okay, so yeah, it looks like the post may have been removed. It also affected, it was also comments about local businesses as well, but obviously we're here to talk about the taxi element of it. But yeah, there was quite a broad brush approach on that one, but I believe it's taken down. And yeah, we put up a post obviously giving out information and support for people if they should, you know, I don't know, instances of a similar nature. Okay. Okay, item number 4 then, please. Declarations of interest.
I received none.
Okay, anyone bringing anything? No? Okay. Let's move on to item 5 then. We're going to read agenda between part A and part B, and there is no part B, so we'll just carry on with A. Item 6, Hackney Carriage Fair Tariff Review. Report by the lead officer, commercial regulation. On over to you, Katie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. As members will note, we came to committee on the 9th of December in respect of the Hackney Carriage Fair Tariff, and the committee resolved to undertake some informal consultation with the Hackney Carriage trade, which has now been undertaken, the results of which are contained within your report. The options provided to drivers were set out within a newsletter, which you'll see from your information is included in your bundle, and they were given the option to provide a preference for option 1 or 2, and we have, as I said, a number of representations attached to Appendix B, which vary from being disappointed with the increase, citing factors such as escalating oil price and escalating price of groceries and essentials, and so on and so forth. As members will also note, we have one Hackney Carriage, which is a horse-drawn vehicle. It's the only Hackney Carriage that we have of that nature within the district, and there's been representation from that individual that the tariff is amended to provide a minimum hire period, which members will need to consider in making any recommendation. In terms of the next process, there is a statutory process outlined under the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act of 1976, whereby we go out in the newspaper for consultation with members of the public, and obviously the trade can also provide further representations. And following that, if there are any representations, it needs to come back to committee. If there's not representations in respect of the advertisement, then we go on to approve the tariff. In terms of the next part of that process, what it looks like is taxi drivers coming into the council to have their meters changed, if they want. Our policy says that they can have the current tariff or the preceding tariff in their meters, so it's not a mandate for them to come in and have it changed. But for the most part, you would expect, in light of the escalating fuel price, that people would want to change that. We have done it in the past where we presume that all drivers would come in to have it changed, and actually only a small portion did come in, because as per the original consultation that was undertaken in December, some of the drivers do feel that the tariff is high enough, and some actually cited that they felt it was too high. So there are quite polarised views in respect of this subject area. In terms of the position with escalating fuel prices, it's obviously something that's very topical at the moment with the volatility of the fuel price. I've had a look again in terms of comparison as to what other Devon authorities are doing in terms of surcharge, and a lot of other councils, Torbay, Exeter, Teignbridge, by way of example, don't have a surcharge on their tariff. We do have a surcharge, and as per the December report, it will be prudent for us to change the wording of that, because at the moment we cite the South West average fuel price figures from the AA, and that source of information is gone, and it's now we utilise the government fuel price data. I looked today and just now, and on the government fuel price, the ultra low sulphur diesel is 192.06 pence per litre, and that was the 13th of the 4th. In terms of the surcharge that we have, the suggestion was that we base that on the government data, and we add 10 pence when fuel reaches £1.75 per litre, with an extra 10 pence for every subsequent 10 pence increase. That's something that members will want to consider as part of the representations received. There are individuals that cite that doesn't go far enough, but it's important to note that other councils are not doing that. Some, for example, Exeter, who have one of the highest tariffs now in the UK, I think they're 8 or thereabouts in the league table. I'll have to check that exact position, but they're very high up in the league table. Haven't put in a surcharge based on the tariff being so high on a national basis. The thing to say is that if you had a totally separate tariff, so for example, you had it within the structure of the table itself, so for example, like Christmas Eve tariff or a holiday tariff, what you could have is a fraudulent use of the tariff. So if that is always there as an option, it could be selected and the customer might not be aware of it. Before the current meter style, which is a calendar control meter, so it knows the date and time and when it's a bank holiday and when it's an evening, there was always a level of concern that there could be an element of fraudulent or abuse of the taxi meter by way of the fact that they could choose which tariff, and they could choose that at the wrong time of day. Obviously, the calendar control meter takes that out of the equation, and it's something that we insisted on by way of our policy back in 2011 or something like that. It was a requirement back then. So to bring in a new structure that was an additional tariff, a little bit like a special rate, could cause problems in terms of the fraudulent use of it. And then in terms of our near neighbours in Devon, not many others have a surcharge at all. We obviously have that provision, and it's a case of whether members feel that that is suitable. The other surcharge I did see was Plymouth. They have 10 pence for fuel exceeding £1.70 a litre. So we've got £1.75. So that might be something to consider if you want to drop that litre price. Because ultimately, if you have a long journey, 10 pence on a whole journey that might be quite a long one in a rural area isn't particularly a large amount. And obviously, we do have an area where we're going to get longer journeys, unlike perhaps a metropolitan. Something for members to consider.
It's like, it's not 10 pence a mile, it's 10 pence a certain
Journey.
for a journey, just 10p
Yes,
for your whole journey.
that's right. Yeah. And so the surcharge it provides a little something, but it doesn't scratch the surface in terms of having a very long journey that might be perhaps 10
Yes.
miles.
That worked well in Plymouth, wouldn't it? At 10p.
That's right. Yes, that's it.
Yeah.
But as I said, in terms of our other rural counterparts, then no one seems to have a specific structure that's just to deal with the volatility of fuel price. I guess the main method is to bring the tariff back again and to make that amendment to it. But as you're well aware, it takes a long time in terms of consultation. There's a newspaper advertisement required, and in terms of the meetings, it's not an expedient process. So that's something for members to consider. So in terms of the recommendation, at 2.1, it's recommended that the Licensing Community Safety Committee consider the responses made to the informal consultation, which ran in January, February, then decide upon whether either of the options circulated to the trade should then be formally advertised in line with the local government miscellaneous provisions, or whether it's necessary to make further amendments based on the responses that we've had in. For example, to implement that suggested 10-minute hire period for non-motorised vehicles, which I don't feel is problematic, or to make additional provision for higher surcharge based on the representation received about the escalating fuel price, and then to determine whether to instruct myself to formally advertise the tariff in the local newspaper as part of that necessary process under the Local Government Miscellaneous Provisions Act. To provide some level of clarity in terms of the reasons for the recommendations, the fair should provide a fair balance between public protection and the interests of drivers. Reviews should carefully consider the representations from the trade that must balance public expectation. And there's a quote there up through 1 from James Button. He's a very eminent legal professional in this field, that taxi fares are maximum and in principle are open to downward negotiation between passenger and driver. It's not good practice to encourage such negotiation on ranks or for on-street hailing. There would be risks of confusion and security problems. Obviously, members will need to take into consideration in their recommendations the fuel price rise and the data that was provided in the report of the 9th of December, provided in respect of the CPI and the increases, and also the benchmarking data, which is all in that December report. That would probably conclude my recommendation. Thank you.
Well, thank you for going out to consultation and getting the replies back. Excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat now. I know back in December we did obviously look at all those fuel prices and we put all of the options for the rates, and we did come down to 2, didn't we? But having now read, obviously we did that in completely good faith based on those consultation replies we had previously. But now, of course, they've come back and are going on about the cost of living, and that's my main concern, is that we are the only option they have to increase their prices at the rate of the cost of living. So I don't know how you feel, but I'm now in my head considering maybe going for the £3.90 option and bringing up more level with some of the other areas. We are still one of the lowest. We do have drivers who are more rural and have to go further from A to B to even do their jobs as well. And I'm just wondering whether anyone would have any objections to debating or just agreeing that, because I do feel that it, and also because it's a maximum. I know we don't want to go down the road of negotiations at the door of the taxi, but if there are clients and customers that they have regularly, who they may know may be struggling to afford a taxi, they can actually charge less. They don't actually have to charge that full amount. So I don't know how people feel about that. Yeah, Councillor Bascom.
I sort of slightly changed my view as well. And read through the responses, and I think, I guess in my head I was thinking of the short journeys around the town and the night trade, but actually it's a much bigger picture, isn't it? We've got, elderly people coming in from very remote areas who are reliant on these taxis, and if they're not allowed to, if they can't make a living out of it and they stop doing daytimes, as one alluded to, that they might only concentrate on night fares, what are those elderly people going to do then? We don't have much alternative provision for them. So, and like you say, if it's somebody they've been dealing with for a long time, they've got the ability to not charge them that. But I think it would be fairer on the drivers, and we might maintain more taxi service if we allow them a bit more flexibility there.
Right. It's a tricky one, isn't it? Obviously, we've got to weigh up both sides. But if, let's say, there are no taxi drivers, then no one can get a taxi. But if no one can afford the taxis, they can bring their prices down, or we can review it at the next time we review the fares. So it gives them an opportunity to at least make a better living, doesn't it? So yeah, anyone else got any thoughts on that?
In terms of it, making that increase on the flag rate, it won't obviously affect the running mile, and so it would affect a journey a lot less than if you were to add a 10 pence on to the 10th thereafter, because then obviously that has a cumulative effect over the whole journey, and would be far more attractive for a journey, say, from Constable to South Moulton or Linton.
If the traffic's bad.
And there was also points someone made about regularity of our tariff reviews, and we did resolve, I think, at one of our previous meetings to make it biannual, and I appreciate that for taxi drivers that isn't like having an annual increase, like most people who have a job get an annual increase, don't they? But obviously then you've now said about how long the process takes. Also, it takes a lot of office time to set it all up. So I don't know whether the balance should be annually or biannually. I don't know how people feel about that, because if I was beholden to the council for my wage increase and it didn't come, it hasn't come now for over, it's about 4 years, isn't it?
But we must bear in mind that fuel price decreased in that period,
right?
2022.
Yeah, that's true. Well, if no one's got any further thoughts on that item, I would suppose going up to the 390. Will that mean having to reconsult? No, right. Yeah.
Question about the drawn taxi. Whereabouts is that? I've never seen.
In
one person.
Yeah.
I think.
But when we as a local authority are open to applications for motorised vehicles, so that it could include for the bicycle kind of arrangement, don't tend to have that type of application because of the roads and the nature of our communities, and we just have that one. They mean to say that we might not get further applications.
I am a little bit disappointed to hear that we have. I really don't agree with with the traffic the way it is now, with horses being used to.
We do have quite a stringent set of conditions surrounding the
Leave the horses well looked after.
and the veterinary inspections pertaining to the horse breed within our policy.
Actually used to, rather than as a taxi going from A to B, it's sort of a tour of Ilfracombe in the summer months. Don't see it in the winter. It's just the summer months and people,
Touristic.
a horse-drawn carriage going round with
Yeah.
showing the sights of Ilfracombe.
They do in foreign countries, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, through the chair, there is obviously a choice.
Whatever, but that's
A
what.
choice of making that journey for a member of the public rather than a typical taxi, so hence no version into that. From that.
But I think the item on that one was about the 10-minute waiting time, wasn't it? Something?
That's correct.
Yeah. Councillor Clayton.
Well, Councillor Maskell asked that question because I didn't want to show my ignorance by asking it myself. I didn't realise we had horse-drawn one. But it's been explained, thank you. Presumed it would be used for holiday makers and tourists. Which has to be a good thing. I mean, anything that brings people back to Ilfracombe has to be a good thing, but I do take on board. You know, sometimes
Waiting for it.
always seen recently have been the Grand National, which is extreme version of what happened for horses, but I think with something like that, it would be well looked after. I don't think things like that.
Has anyone actually used it?
Extended to Barnstaple, thanks.
Has anyone actually?
Always offered to be the.
Yeah, yeah. I don't mind betting on the Grand National, but this is as far as my horse expertise goes.
Has anyone used that service? Anyone know what it's like?
I've had relations come to visit and used it, been on it,
Yeah.
so it's wonderful.
Excellent.
Sometimes use it for marriages and things, don't it? I mean,
Yeah.
that's something that.
The only one I was aware of is the one at Arlington Court, but that's obviously a private situation, isn't it? On Arlington Court, I know they've got the carriage that goes round the grounds. Yeah.
Councillors there.
Hope you have a trip out there as a committee. Councillor David.
Just a quick one. I did go through the responses from the consultation, and it does seem that the majority are taxi drivers themselves. Was there a lot of response from outside sort of members of the public?
That will come.
Yeah, so that will come when members make their decision today. It will then get posted in the
Right, so
newspaper.
was for
It was solely
trade only.
Yeah,
local trade. That's a kind of
and they seemed on most responses to want to go for option 2.
Yes, that's
That's,
type of.
Yeah.
That seemed prominent.
But most of them weren't happy with that either.
Yes.
You know, they wanted more, and I think they probably do deserve more, to be honest. There was one snarky comment about they don't think it should go out to public consultation and it should be nothing to do with the public.
That's why I
Yeah.
asked, why are we asking members of the public? Is our,
Yeah.
it's our trade.
Yeah,
And overall, they seem quite sort of okay with the nighttime charges. I
Yeah.
think
I think
it was
that's
just,
that's where the money is at the moment. I
Definitely
think.
preferred
Yeah,
option 2.
yeah. Right, so let's look at the recommendations then. So 2 point, sorry, I need to put my glasses on. So 2.1.1 considers the responses made to the informal consultation with the Hackney Carriage and Private Hire Trade, which ran in January, February 2026. 2.1.2 decide upon whether either of the options circulated to the trade should then be formally advertised in line with, or whether it is necessary to make further amendments based upon those responses received, which is, I think, where I'm heading. I don't know about everyone else. We'll have a vote in a minute. For example, whether to further increase day rate, implement a minimum 10-minute hire period for non-motorised vehicles. or to make additional provision for a higher surcharge based on the representation received and escalating fuel prices due to the USA and Iran war, while still considering the licensing authority's role in terms of public protection. So let's discuss fuel surcharge. We didn't debate that, did we? What do people feel about that? What is the rate at the moment? December's meeting had a whole list of the fuel prices on, I think it was on a weekly basis, or was it a daily basis? Weekly basis, and the last price we had was the 13th of October, which is £1.34 a litre petrol and £1.43 a litre for diesel. Obviously, that's gone up.
It's now 192
192.
pence per litre on the 13th of the 4th.
26. So way above that 175 then, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we also don't know how long that's going to go on for. And obviously at some point, presumably it will come back down again. It fluctuates, obviously. They currently can charge the 10p, can't they? They're currently on that, aren't they?
They currently can. It's the wording of the surcharge that needs to be firstly amended, because it talks about what's it that no longer exists. I think it hasn't existed for a number of months now, and in its place we've got the government website.
Yeah.
Data on it. We definitely need to change it.
Need to link it.
Link to that. And then in terms of the options provided to the trade, both option 1 and option 2 had 10 pence on top of the tariff, and diesel price exceeded £1.75 per litre. And the reason we cited sort of diesel there is that that's the predominant fuel source of the taxi fleet. And then there's an extra 10 pence when there's a further 10 pence on top of
So it doesn't go up each time.
It was 185, it's 20 pence,
so
for example.
Okay.
And as indicated, not very many authorities have this, albeit Plymouth, we noted, had 10 pence when it was £1.70 per litre. So members may wish to consider whether they would want to align with the likes of Plymouth in terms of that bottom line.
Well, so at the moment then, they're presumably claiming 20 pence then, because it's gone over 185. Is that right? Yeah.
That's only on the whole journey though, isn't
It's
it?
per journey, yeah.
It's not a great
So
deal.
40 metres.
It's not a great deal at all. But then to the converse of that, we've got this issue, if you put in a whole special tariff, then we could have huge problems in terms of misuse of that tariff. There was a lot of investment by the trade in going to calendar control to automate the process. So the 10 pence is via the extras button, a little bit like luggage.
Yeah.
So we have the ability to charge 20 pence for an item of luggage. And in the past, not of late, I might add, but many years ago, we used to sometimes get complaints of, well, you charge me 20 pence for every Tesco carrier bag or something. And there's an abuse of the system. And I think that would be possible with a whole separate tariff. So I think if members are minded to make any changes, that the extras button is the best way to do it to prevent fraudulent use.
Yeah.
But it doesn't provide a great deal for a long journey.
I don't think putting it into the actual tariff, giving a benefit in the tariff would work, especially when prices come back down again. It's difficult to judge, isn't it? Any thoughts, people? So we'd likely to leave it as it is then, just 10p per journey, per 10p of increase. That's Norman.
That's not real. Well, that's the prices pretty increase. any emergency powers? I mean, it would take a year to review and implement, and the service could go overnight. That service, they could have slowed down, didn't they? I mean, it shut up drastically in the last few weeks.
Mm.
I mean, I imagine they're living on contract work. Because most of them got sort of NHS and contract work. That's the bread and butter is, which is daytime work.
Yeah.
And it's happy nighttime work, but I mean, I don't use a taxi, but it's that daytime. And I mean, I know that a while ago, Ilfracombe, you were lucky to get a taxi during the day in Ilfracombe at one time.
And night now,
And night, yeah.
anytime.
I'm going to answer, but this is concerning me that the way the fuel prices are going up. And I mean, it is true, these drivers are not making a fortune.
Do people want to maybe, rather than actually, well, as well as putting the flag rate up, do you want to put the general price per mile up as well, which would help to cover some of that? But then that would stay in place until the next review, which fuel prices may have come down again. So I don't know how people feel about that. What was the option? I'm just looking at, if you look at December's agenda, you can see all of the different flag rate changes, what it would mean, and all of that. So it's called the running mile. If you wanted to increase the running miles as well. Councillor Maddox.
Yeah, I mean, they're talking on the news with the information that even if the war was to finish tomorrow, it's going to be months and months and months before the prices do come back down.
Right.
So, I mean, based on what we're seeing at the moment, I think, it's going to be another few months before things even change there.
Mm.
So we'll probably be looking at December, January before we even see any changes if we're lucky.
Mm.
We could see it going up even more with what's going on with the blockade and that. And if we brought up the price per mile now, then we're not going to be reviewing it in 2 years' time. So you almost put in a sort of safety net there, really. You haven't got 2 years' time, you could just leave it as it is.
So if we increase the running mile, are we talking about removing the fuel surcharge then? Because that would be basically what we're talking about.
Fuel surcharge is a waste of time, really.
It certainly doesn't provide a
No.
great deal for the longer journeys.
No. So if I can ask you, Katie, if we did the 390 flag, what would be a good, where are we? Is this the right one I'm looking at here, the 391? So flag rate 470, which would bring the running mile to £4.30. That makes sense? No, £4.30. The running mile will be £8. That was where the £8.10 comes from.
This is
Is that an increase of running mile? Where's the current? That was the current one.
this is daytime. This is not orientation.
Which one's daytime? Oh, I see. Right, it's got you. Right, so that would be the same then. So what, another 390?
What page is this on?
This is on, sorry, page 55 of December's agenda.
For members wanting a quick link on page 31, paragraph 3.3 of the current report, there's a link to the December report there.
So currently, the flag rate is 310 and the running mile is 280.
What page are we looking at this on this agenda then?
55. 55. 390 and maybe, I don't know how these figures calculate computers, but you could do 390 maybe and increase the flag at the running mile to say 310 or something. Would that make that?
If you wanted to put the running mile to the CPI, which
Yeah.
is 13.7%,
Yes.
that would be a running mile of £3.18.
On top of a flag rate of 390.
Yes.
Yeah. How about that then, folks?
Which one's that?
So
This is
column
seven-
number 3, which is the trade 390 flag.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus column 10, the running mile
Yeah.
of 318.
Yeah.
And add those together, what do we get? Or something. £4.8 per mile. Which brings us to £8.16.
How does that compare to other?
It's half. You have to divide that.
Okay, sorry, complicated.
Money.
average.
Average journey around Ilfracombe. Easily be a tenner, wouldn't it? 2 hours.
At present.
Definitely.
Also bear in mind, this is going to be a temporary decision really, because once we get the new authority,
Yeah, then it'd be.
and it might be that actually, as in that consultation, that like taxi licensing is taken to the strategic authority once we get one. And the decision will be out of our hands and it will be brought in line across the whole district, the whole area, the whole peninsula. So this is only going to be a few years like this, and then it'll be taken out of local hands, really. Anyway,
And
that's
you
what it
said
is.
they can do it less if they choose to.
Yes, this is a maximum they can charge. They can charge less. If we're pricing them out of the market, they'll soon be complaining that they're charging too much because there's no
And then
customers.
they can
you know,
drop
so-
it down and they can be competitive themselves
Yeah, yeah.
with obviously
Mm.
a limit.
What you're proposing now.
Just 1 minute, because Casey's just working out the numbers.
Yeah.
You got one tax type of roads, haven't you? One tax type of roads
Yeah,
on the sides of the roads.
is how many miles?
Okay.
15.
If you had,
Yeah.
if you had a £3.90 flag rate,
Yeah,
So one.
as opposed to 3.10, which it is at the moment,
Yeah.
and you had a £3.18 running mile, as opposed to 2.80, which it is now, that would give you a 1 mile rate of £5.49, as opposed to £4.50, which it is
so
now.
it's pound a mile
At
extra.
2 miles, it would be £8.67, which it is £7.30 now. And at 10-mile journey, it would be £34.11 instead of £29.70. So you can see that as soon as you change that running mile, for the journey from Barnstaple to Morton, as an example, which is around about 10 miles, then that's where it makes a difference because of the cumulative impact.
41 difference.
Yeah. Which is a lot, isn't it?
But that's how much fuel they're putting in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Thinking of an old lady that's on a fixed pension and, you know.
But then you've got to keep the drivers in business at the same time.
And they can
I
charge
thought it was
less.
going to be more than that, so I'm quite happy.
The thing is, what's in my mind is, as far as I'm aware, it's 4 years since this has been reviewed. It's 4 years.
2022, I think, was the last one.
But that would bring your 2 mile national average, which is what they compare against, which is currently £7.36. If you were to do what we're proposing there with the 390 and the 318, which I think we'd have to amend slightly because they do not like it when it ends on sort of odd pence.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It would give you £8.67 for a 2 mile journey, which is compared to the £7.36 national average. And the local average is £7.87. That was produced in December, so there will be tariffs having been changed subsequently to that December report.
But they don't have to charge that, they can make it less.
And we would take away the 10p surcharge as well. For the fuel surcharge. Do you think that's something they would prefer? I mean, I don't know how they could put
Yes.
that surcharge. We're doing all these sort of number crunching, but actually, is it going to benefit them?
I think you'll get massively polarised view if you were to seek opinion on it, largely because when we initially went out for consultation, there were those drivers that felt that it was too high.
Yeah, right. Well, I suppose the the middle ground is to put the flag rate up to 390, leave everything else as it is. They're getting 80p a journey more.
Leave the surcharge as it
Leave the
is.
surcharge as it is.
Surcharge up to like 20p instead of 10p.
Yeah, you can do that.
Can we do that?
You can do that to the surcharge, and similarly on the surcharge, what you could do is change it so every 5p it went up a litre, or you can play with that.
So they're getting a 10p extra that they're paying. Oh, that's only per journey. They don't pay. It's not per fuel, is it? But yeah, per journey. Yeah, yeah, we could do that.
At the moment, it's 10p added when the fare exceeds 175. So you could reduce that to 170 in line with Plymouth
Yeah.
if you wanted.
Do that.
And then you could say that with a further 10p added for an increase of 5p per litre, or you could say 20p added. It's entirely at your discretion.
Okay. So do we, I think going down to 170 is a nice idea. And then do we prefer 10p on every 5p increase or 20p on every 10p increase? Which essentially is the same, but how do we actually want to make it sort of compute?
Can I just ask, are we picking £3.18 because it's on here, so we don't have to go back through everything?
That's because
Why we haven't chose, say, £3.
that's
say?
related to the CPI across of 13.7%. That's the interest increases.
Yeah, that was the CPI from the date of the last review.
Yeah.
This is so difficult, isn't it?
It's very tricky. Yeah.
Because you want to balance the
Yeah.
public expectation and
Okay, so shall I just say, and then people can.
Yeah.
Right, okay. £3.90 flag rate.
Yeah.
Okay, keep the running mile as it is. Bring the fuel surcharge down to start at £1.70.
Yeah.
And then put 10p on every 5p increase in fuel. Right.
20p every 5p increase. And it's nothing.
No, it's still this.
Yeah.
Is that right?
you can do 10 or you could do 20.
20p. 20p. That's right. Yes, you're right. 20p on every 10p.
20p on every
Or
5p
yeah.
increase, yeah. It's negligible, no
Yeah.
one would know.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That was negligible, isn't it?
For the individual, it's not a lot.
Yeah. 20p on every 5p increase. Yeah, that's good.
Above what limit? Above 170.
Above 170.
Mm.
Which is over now, so they can, start.
£1 a journey, it's
Yeah.
not huge for the
Yeah.
customer, is it?
Yeah,
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So let's reiterate. Let's just do that one proposal, okay?
Yeah.
£3.90 flag rate
92.
on the daily rate.
on the day. Sorry, tariff one day rate £3.90 increased from £3.10. No increase to the running mile.
Yeah.
The fuel surcharge can start at £1.70. And it will be 20p for every 5p increase.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Right, all in favour of, oh, let me have a second on that. Okay, councillor Norman, all of those in favour of that option?
Yeah.
I think we got there. Thank you, everyone. Right, brilliant.
If it's well received, I'll take all the credit for it.
Right, now back to the recommendation. Are you happy with that, Casey? Right. The next bit was so we've covered those, and the 10-minute hire period for non-motorised vehicles. Are we in favour of that? Favour proposer for that? That's the fourth one, yeah. Proposer for that, thank you, councillor. Aylwin. Oh, this is in that one, it's in the middle of that one, the 10-minute hire period for non-motorised. Okay, so councillor Hayward Boone has proposed. Seconder, please. Councillor Quinn, and all of those in favour of that one, please show. Okay, all except one. Do you abstain? Abstain, one abstention. So I can think of the word.
I think Carol's just raised just to make it totally clear in a minute that this is on top of one or two. So all the other wording comes through, for example, on the surcharge wording and the other names that we do.
Yeah. So it was option 2, it's on 316. There's a surcharge of 20p to be added. 70 and a further 20 to be added for subsequent increase in 5 pence.
On top of option, all amendments on top of.
Yes.
Was it one or two?
I think it was.
It's not good to back. But they've shown it, isn't it? That's what we can, and it's-
I think everything was the same except the flag rate, wasn't it? I think it's on top of the
Top of the tariff for just to be clear that these changes are on top of the and also the for yeah, you need to also, members, you need to just determine whether to change tariff 4, because tariff 4 is
right.
50% on top of tariff 1. So
Well, then I guess yes.
you that would then cause
Bit complicated, isn't it?
and
If you could just refer to page number is it 16 of this agenda. We're just looking at the tariff 4 because this is for fares of 5, 6 or 7 or 8 passengers, which is obviously not £3.90, that's higher, it's a 50% increase. Okay, just doing some more counts for that one.
it would give 585
Yeah.
as a tariff 4 flag.
Okay. 585.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
It's on a larger,
It's a larger vehicle.
larger.
Yeah. So maybe our little lady should get all together and grab a taxi together.
Yeah. So it's 585.
Okay, can I have well, I'll propose that and a seconder for that one, that option, thank you. All those in favour for that second rate then?
Yeah.
That's everybody else unanimous, thank you.
I've got my tea badger.
Right. Right, those. Now, finally, we need to determine whether to instruct the lead environmental health officer, commercial regulation to formally advertise the tariff in a local newspaper as part of the necessary process outlined under the LGMP A76 regulation. Okay, I'll propose that. Seconder, please. Thank you, councillor Norman, and all those in favour? No. That's unanimous. Thank you. Right. Yes, yeah, okay, lovely, thank you. Right, so then we'll move now to item 7, which is a verbal update from the lead officer for commercial regulation. Over to you again, Katie, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So we've had some good news in terms of our staffing. We've recently recruited a new member of staff to Phil's old vacant post, and that new individual will start with us on the 13th of May. Very much looking forward to welcoming that individual to the team. It's been quite difficult without that member of staff. Sorry, they've got a cold. Been quite. Yeah, very much looking forward to welcoming that individual. It's been really quite tough, and we are very eagerly awaiting his arrival. In terms of other updates, animal licensing, we've done lots of work to our website to provide lots of templates and example policies and procedures for our animal licensing type premises, so dog boarders, breeders, daycare, pet shops, and so on and so forth. We feel that that is a benefit in terms of people making their applications to reduce the number of occasions where we're finding problems with policies and so on. So there's some template preventive healthcare plans, for example, that they can utilise and get signed off by the vet, that type of thing. So lots of work there. We've also gone to an electronic inspection process. For those establishments, we've invested in some technology called Safety Culture, which is a brilliant bit of software to enable us to design inspection forms quite easily and to be able to change it without having to go through IT or a specialist. It's very intuitive, and we've built lots of different forms. And it's really streamlined our inspection process because the person having received their inspection can now be privy to the full electronic report, which they can then use as a self-audit tool. And rather than us then having to extract data from the handwritten inspection into a letter, we can just write in the letter, please refer to your report for all the actions, and it is making quite a significant time saving for us. We still have quite a backlog of inspections because of the staffing issue, but hopefully once we get someone, we can start to make some inroads into that. In terms of enforcement on animals, we've recently issued our first fixed penalty notice for £5,000 to a licensed dog breeder that wasn't complying with some of their conditions of licence. We recently also have executed a warrant at a dog breeding site without a licence, which was a multi-agency involvement with the RSPCA. And that looks like we'll be issuing a further fixed penalty notice. That was something that was introduced by way of the Animal Penalty Notices Act. And it is a really good tool. We would have to be of the mindset to be prosecuting that individual, and then they can take that fixed penalty as an omission, and if they pay within a shorter time period, I think it's 28 days, then that fine does reduce. But it is a useful sanction for us in certain situations. Clearly we can't use that where there are serious welfare breaches. We would still prosecute, but it's another tool we have available. On the 1st of April, the new primate legislation came into effect. So anyone keeping a primate in a domestic setting now requires a licence. We haven't had any applications come forward, but we were expecting that we may get one or two, because actually the national estimates of primates have been kept in domestic settings in the UK are in the thousands, and that was something that's come from the ISPCA, but we haven't had anything like that. So if you know of anyone keeping a primate in a domestic setting, then we'd be interested to hear. Yeah, my colleague and I went to Monkey World on a course on primate licensing, and they're highly intellectual creatures, and it's a fascinating experience, and that will be of value because obviously we have zoological sites in our area which are subject to an inspection process to find out more about these animals is a useful opportunity. We've gone live with some campaign materials which came out of the Institute of Licensing, some good posters and so on that we put on our social media campaign. In terms of Hackney carriages, there was the government consultation that local transport authorities take on the licensing of taxi and private hire vehicles. The response from the council was that the proposals are unnecessarily badly timed and would increase costs both for the overall administration system, the trade and the consumer. The response from the Devon and Torbay combined county authority very much mirrored that, and similarly our Institute of Licensing warned that the overhaul would be unworkable. So those are the general feeling. Our Devon Licensing Officers Group put in a very solid representation to the proposals. In terms of other things moving in Hackney Carriage, the councils could face a new duty to publish data on out of area licence suspensions. A proposed amendment to the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill would require licensing authorities in England to collect and publish annual data on suspension of out of area taxi licences. So that's something that may come forward. In terms of other updates, the government has launched an independent inquiry into grooming gangs and has confirmed that licensing systems, including taxi and private hire, are among areas that it might scrutinise as it examines institutional responses to group-based child sexual exploitation. There's some new VAT measures in the UK for the private sector, private hire sector. They've taken effect. I don't think that's massively impacted for some of our operators, but that commenced on the 2nd of January this year. In terms of our own policies, Euro standards, as of the 1st of January this year, our policy for Euro standards on taxi and private hire vehicles changed, and that was to require Euro 6 emission standards for our fleet. So we weren't making renewals vehicles after the 1st of January this year that didn't meet those standards. We've had a number of refusals of Hackney Carriage private hire driver licence applications, and for various reasons, convictions and so on and so forth. We have had one appeal come in of late, which is yet to be determined by the magistrates. We've put out Hackney Carriage and private hire newsletters just to remind drivers about turning right onto the square Torbale, because we've had some reports come in of drivers seem to turn right out of Burport Street as it accesses the square into Torbale. And we have put some information in our trade newsletter about applying for hire and concerns that we've had raised about vehicle parking, particularly around Hardway Head, King Street. So they've been advised on that. On non-taxi matters, tobacco and vapes bill, that's one where trading standards will be responsible for the enforcement, and then licensing or local authorities responsible for upholding the new retailer licensing scheme, strengthening regulations on tobacco and nicotine. A government-backed majority in the House of Lords defeated an amendment aimed at delaying the implementation of the bill. So that's something to note. We have been also watching out for cosmetic procedure legislation on licences, but there seems to be no movement in that. We are left with still a registration system for skin piercing and no decent licensing regime for the cosmetic industry, so Botox and fillers and such like, which is very disappointing. It's very slow movement. In terms of taxi licensing, we're putting together a safeguarding presentation to bring in-house. We previously did that through a consultant, but we've had a member of the team that has put together something that we hope to bring in-house fairly shortly. So that's good news. And then the last comment I had was just in terms of the communication on the issue that you raised at the commencement of this meeting, which we've discussed.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's lots going on, and hopefully we'll see sort of back up to speed on a lot of our regulatory work when we get a new licensing officer. Coupled with all of these things, we've been going live on Verso, which is a massive change for us of our database. So we've been moving from Laupac to Verso, which is an enormous piece of work. We've been live with taxis now for a year, and we've now received all forms for every other licence area, which we are laboriously having to go through and check before we go live on the other areas. My colleague here, Rafe, at the end, I'll introduce you. He's one of our apprentice environmental health officers. He's kindly working with the team to provide some additional support to our licensing case officers on temporary event notices and some applications. So Rafe's getting up to speed on some of those things to help us with this massive project on Verso to free up some other staff time to do a lot of these application forms. It's a huge amount of work and it's not without teething issues. I think having gone live now with taxis, we're well aware of the potential sort of pitfalls, and it has been a positive experience, but it's taken a long time to get to where we wanted to. But we're now live and seeing the benefits of that online application system. So thankfully, assisting. Yeah, and that sums up my update.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's lots going on. Councillor Maskell.
Thank you, and thanks for the report. It's really interesting. You mentioned vaping, sale of vapes, and it just triggered. I was driving through Braunton yesterday, and I noticed a group of, I would say they were between 12 and 14-year-olds coming out of a shop, and I saw the girl go like this, and she had vapes. She'd obviously successfully bought. She was the one that had the makeup on and looked the oldest. So, and I just wondered, is there any way of sort of raising that particular shop, because I could see they weren't old enough?
Yeah, so to our trading standards colleagues would be ones to currently point that information to in terms of age restricted sort of sales, and that won't change with the new legislation. So trading standards will carry on dealing with that. What's going to be new is that potentially local authorities, depending on whether this bill is enacted in the manner it's drafted, will then become responsible for the licensing regime associated with the premises themselves. So yeah, we can certainly help pass that on to some colleagues and home standards, and it is of concern with the age use of some of these products. Obviously, they're highly addictive.
Thank you. One question I had actually was about, do you remember we did probably a year ago now, we looked at the different taxi ranks and the changes to those.
Yes.
Do you know if those have actually happened, and like the ones in Willicombe and Braunton, have they been swapped over yet?
No, not
No.
yet. And that's largely a delay on our part, so we need to get an advert out again in the
Right.
newspaper. I've got a draft public notice with the Gazette and the Journal and an invoice amount, so we just need to push that forward. County are very aware that we're been dragging our heels on that subject, largely because we've had so many other things come through.
Understandably,
And the other area is our annual licensing policy, which went to committee on the 9th of December alongside the taxi item, and we just haven't had the manpower to get that out in consultations yet, but these two items are definitely on the list.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Quinn.
On the same subject, I've been asked a number of times about the tax racks in Ilfracombe. One of them's going to change outside to Witherspoon. And over a year ago, we had a special group sorted it out. After that, they said yes, it's going to public consultation, and then that That's probably got, I keep being asked, and number of times I was going to bring it up today.
Yeah.
So thanks for bringing that
Yeah.
up. Is there a sort of time limit or time span you could expect? You could say 3 years, 6 months, 2 months.
In terms of the timescale, obviously, we would adopt it under local government miscellaneous provisions, but in tandem with that, it needs to be part of the traffic regulation order, so I couldn't answer on timescale because of the council. But I would suggest that in the next couple of weeks, we'll be putting that advert out because it's drafted.
Advertising,
Yes,
it's going to happen.
yes.
And then after that, we have to wait for council to come and do all the signage and the stuff.
I think, yeah.
All right, I'll just relay that to my,
Yeah, at
Right.
least we know, and yeah,
Cool.
and it's progressing, yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, to butt
Yeah,
in,
no
but there was you mentioned Braunton, yeah, I think there was an agreement that the current taxi rank on the Exeter Road could sort of dual as a loading bay during the day, but that obviously hasn't happened. Yeah, that's all.
All in the mix in terms of, I think it's about £400 or thereabouts, and so we've got budget to do it. It just needs to move forward.
Okay. Brilliant, thank you very much. Any further questions on the report? Councillor Can.
Brilliant report, thank you very much, Kate. Just one query from me. We used to have sort of several hearings that used to come up. There haven't been any for, quite some time now. Is that because everybody's out there behaving, or are you having to deal? Well, they did used to come up quite frequently, and I think there was about 4 subcommittees, and it just seems to have gone very quiet.
Yeah.
Just interesting whether you're taking them on, or is it?
Through the chair, so we changed our licensing policy to delegate to officers more decision-making powers. So the refusal to grant and renew taxi drivers has largely been dealt with at officer level successfully, because it was taking a considerable period to write those reports, to make them accessible, to upload them onto Modern Gov, and actually, in terms of the scheme of delegations, it was perfectly reasonable to allow an officer to do that. And that was largely in line with the changes where we were given the Institute of Licensing suitability guidance on convictions, which provide a very detailed period of time. For example, if someone has a previous conviction for driving without insurance, as an example, it will stipulate the number of years after which that conviction or sentence expires, how long before they can then realistically apply to a licensing authority again to provide a level of national consistency. And so subsequent to that, we've taken on a lot more decision making, and it's proving to work quite well. As I said, we do have one potential appeal against one of the council's decisions, but the rest of them have gone through totally unhindered and smoothly. In terms of the Licensing Act, then we are obviously getting large amounts of applications. We have huge numbers coming through, and temporary event notices and so on and so forth, but it'll be only when there is a representation in respect of an application that isn't mediated out that it will then go on to committee. So by the inference of them not going to committee, it means that there's been a level of officer mediation to agree conditions before it needs to go to a hearing. So that would be the reason. But yeah, lots of work being done in the background, really.
Excellent. Right, well, if everyone's happy, I'll close the meeting then. Thank you very much for all your support, everybody. Thank you. Thanks for coming.